O Bhagavad Gita, by which Arjuna was illumined by Lord Krishna himself, and which was composed of 18 chapters within the Mahabharata by the ancient sage Vyasa. O Divine Mother, destroyer of rebirth, who showers the nectar of oneness upon us, O Bhagavad Gita, my affectionate mother, on thee I meditate. All the Upanishads are the cows. The milker is the cowherd boy, Krishna. Arjuna is the calf. People of purified intellect are the drinkers. And the milk is the supreme nectar of the Gita. My salutations to the Lord, who is the source of supreme bliss, whose grace makes the mute eloquent and the crippled cross mountains. Hari Om Tat Sat. Swami Satchidananda. We'll pick up here. Light of all lights is where we closed yesterday. Really, we closed with 18 following, but I'll read this for our starting point. That the light of all lights is said to be beyond darkness. Can we touch that place again where we can relate to the light of all lights? Is said to be beyond darkness. Knowledge, the knowable, and the goal of knowledge, seated in the hearts of all. So, do you see Lord Krishna here is equating the light of all lights with knowledge, the knowable, and the goal of knowledge. And he says where the light and this knowledge, the knowable, and the goal of knowledge, where it resides. Where is it?
In every one of us.
Seated in the
Heart.
Heart. So the center of our being. And yesterday we had the discussion from Swami Satchidananda about that heart being intellect, being the rationating faculty, that which makes the human birth unique vis-a-vis all of the other wombs. All of the other wombs. Does it make sense? All of the other wombs? All of the other places where you could take birth as a quote-unquote individual soul. Well, okay, continuing. Thus the field, as well as the knowledge and the knowable, have been briefly stated. And here's this concept that we were dealing with at the end of our discussion yesterday. My devotee, knowing this, enters into my being. So this is a different translation, so you can tell that the word my devotee comes from the original Sanskrit. It's not added as commentary. So it's central. All of what's being shared is central. Thus the field, as well as knowledge and the knowable, have been briefly stated. My devotee, knowing this, enters into my being. Know thou, that's 18, 19, new territory. Know thou that nature and the spirit are both without beginnings, and modifications and qualities are born of nature. Sanskrit term for, I'm asking now, Sanskrit term for nature is Prakriti, very good. And spirit? Purusha, very good. Oh. There's Yoga Fest in Michigan will not occur this year. It's on the Morning Ranch. But one of the memories from Yoga Fest, beautiful memories, and I'm sure next year it will resume again. It's a very interesting time that we're all passing through. One of the beautiful memories is the whole Yoga Fest group, the presenters and the participants, chanting and going along the Ganga, the Pigeon River there, chanting this. We'll see if it comes. Radha, Radha, Radha Govinda Jaya. Radha, Radha, Radha Govinda Jaya. Spirit and nature dancing together. Spirit and nature dancing together. Radha, Radha, Radha Govinda Jaya. Radha, Radha, Radha Govinda Jaya. Spirit and nature dancing together. Spirit and nature dancing together. Okay. And here Govinda indicating spirit, Krishna, the Absolute, in the deepest, Purusha. And Radha indicating which? Nature, Prakriti. So the divine masculine, as it were, and the divine feminine. And so many different ways of relating in the different traditions. Some philosophies, some systems of philosophy, dualistic in nature, will place the two as being separate, somehow arising separately. But of course, looking deeply, we see it cannot be so. And here it's shared that they're without beginnings, and that the modifications and qualities are born of nature. But it doesn't mean that nature is separate from spirit. In fact, they're inextricably intertwined, and this is what's being discussed here. And nature is here, this chapter is the yoga of the field and the knower of the field. So how do you relate? Field is nature. Yes. And the knower of the field is Purusha. Very good. So, we're taking a lot of emphasis, a lot of focus on this chapter. And this knowledge is identified as the supreme knowledge. In a way, it's so darn simple. And yet, putting it into practice seems to be so hard. So, if we can have clarity on this, however, and then nididhyasana, and then actually genuinely do our best to live it in every single moment, then this leads to union, to union, to the end of the identification with the field and the end of the suffering. Yes. Do you suppose, so we watched Gandhi the last couple of nights. Where do you suppose Gandhiji fit in this? Knower? Did he know what is to be known? We talk about the term samadhi, and we have the idea that samadhi means somebody sitting with their eyes closed somewhere. No, samadhi looks like Gandhi. That's samadhi. Samadhi, the intellect. Sama, balanced, steady, undisturbed, unruffleable. How do you suppose when you see that? Disturbed inside? Did he not know what to do?
Everything he said was just perfect.
So inner state, absolutely union.
Peace.
Absolutely union. Outer, of course, everything here is different. So a particular role, but in the movie, and it had been many years since I'd seen, so grateful for the suggestion that we watch it together, and perfect timing, as you said. Perfect timing for a few reasons. One of them is because of where we are in the Geeta study. Even though they didn't show the quote-unquote religious practices at all, really. Once they were sitting in prayer together.
Are you done with prayer already?
Yes, that's it. There was some discussion about it, and Gandhi sharing what he shared about as he was growing up, participating in a satsanga where the leader of the satsanga would go alternately back and forth between the Quran and the Bhagavad Gita, and not skip a beat between the two. So they didn't show the practices, but they certainly did a very good job of helping us to see the inner state. If you really look, you can see it, the inner state of Gandhi, right? So, and how that inner state manifested outwards. How that inner state, so through the actions we could get some inference on the inner state, but they did a really good job of showing him engaged in activity in a way that was completely undisturbed, unruffled, right? No matter what happened. No matter what happened. So this is what's being referred to here, and this is the know thou that nature and spirit are both without beginnings, and modifications and qualities are born of nature, but this first, my devotee knowing this enters into my being. Commentary from Swami Venkatesananda. It says, the genius of Krishna has compressed into just a dozen verses, these that we've just been covering over the last days, an inexhaustible wealth of knowledge and deep wisdom. Whole volumes can be written explaining each verse, and have been, but they would be hopelessly inadequate compared to deep meditation on each one. And this has been the suggestion, and continues to be, to take a little time each day as we're going through this, a little or a lot. And I ask everyone participating here as a part of this Sangha to look at your days and recognize that not a moment is to be wasted. If you waste a moment, you can't recapture it. And look at how we invest these moments and see if there are moments that can be recaptured. I shared a few days ago, there was a little mini clip of Swami Sarvapriyananda who was speaking about mantra, and he just said, those who've been initiated in mantra, can you see the power of the thought, and how many of the thoughts do you have during the day which are not as beneficial as the mantra? How many words do you speak each day that are not as beneficial as the mantra? Did you see that? And so really, don't waste moments. The moments are to be utilized in study, in contemplation, and in service. Meditation, yes, absolutely as well. But we still tend to devolve because, of course, no judgment. This is a mixed birth. And we're in the field, and there's a lot going on in the field. There's a lot going on in the field. And so we all have our duties. But it's so important to allow yourself to have time during the day to actually take one of these verses. And if it's not from here, then the Bible, the Holy Quran, Swami Shivananda, this or that, Paramahansa Yogananda, this or that, and sit with it and allow yourself to roll it around, to contemplate it, to consider it. These particular verses can be understood. They reveal themselves, but only with contemplation and with doing our best to actualize it. And it's not an intellectual understanding. You see, that is part of it, yeah. But it will reveal itself. We talked about a couple of days ago that the experience, living in this way, living a purposeful life, meaningful life, being devoted and dedicated to the highest, whatever you call it, being really devoted and dedicated to the highest, doing our best to live in accordance with the virtues, with the divine virtues, then we all have experiences, and this experience of actually stepping back, as it were, from this person, the individual person, this mental construct, this concept, being able to see it from a higher level, this comes. So, but only through the process, only through really taking the process seriously. And seriously also means lovingly, joyfully, happily. It doesn't mean dry, it means very wet, of course. So, a little bit more in the commentary. He says, whole volumes can be written, we shared, but they would be hopelessly inadequate compared to deep meditation on each one of these verses. But wait, there are some posers here, he says. Such meditation is possible only to my devotee. God's devotee, not only the devotee of the God form, Krishna. So Swami Venkatesh feels it's important for us to hear that the devotee is not meaning a devotee of Krishna only. It meaning a devotee of the highest. However we relate. Mother Mary, however we relate. Without love, knowledge is hypocrisy, for true knowledge brings complete understanding, and understanding engenders love. On the other hand, love, even of God, without knowledge, may perhaps lead us to superstition, not to God realization. Does that make sense?
One more time, please.
On the other hand, love, even of God, without knowledge, may perhaps lead us to superstition, not to God realization.
Could I use the word fanaticism?
Yeah, you can use the word fanaticism. You can also, we all have visions. We all have experiences that are supra-physical. And so without knowledge, without study, without inquiry, we may interpret these in a way that's not consistent with the truth of the situation that we're in because of limited knowledge. Does that make any sense? Ramanuja Acharya holds that knowledge is one of the most essential aids to God love. Actually, from this perspective, we'd say one leads to the other, and we see it with the saints. Om Namah Shivaya. One leads to the other. In particular, we can say that knowledge leads to devotion. real knowledge, not limited knowledge, but knowledge of what's being discussed here leads to devotion. It has to. We discuss, everybody's devoted to something. But if you know that what you're devoted to is not of merit, will you drop that devotion to it? And if you know that there's something higher that is of merit, will you engage the devotion to that? So devotion will naturally follow knowledge, real knowledge of what's being shared here, the knowledge of the relationship between the knower and the field. You know, what's being shared is, my God, everything that we thought we were, everything that we thought of value, it's all in the field. Even the thoughts about it are in the field. It's a conceptually it's mind-blowing, but in experience it's even bigger than that. And then being able to set aside the field in life. Bless you. Thank you, Lord. Bless you. And then being able to actually set aside the field in life and not be disturbed by what's happening in the field, but be able to stay centered in the intuitive self. My God. That's Gandhi. That's that embodiment of this. Your potential blossoms. To be able, and this knowledge that's being discussed, this knowledge of course leads to this, because you stop holding on to the toys or the tools as if they're you. And you hold them instead only for purpose, which is to serve the one. In all. So if God's devotee attains this knowledge, what becomes of him? He enters into my being. He becomes one with God. No true seeker after God is interested in the academic disputation about whether he retains his individuality or becomes God himself. Perhaps we live in him as fish in the ocean, part of him and yet distinct. What is significant, however, is the fact that such a devotee shares God's nature, matva bhavam. He sees the world as God sees it. He does God's will. And again, looking at Gandhi, does that resonate with what we're seeing there? Hence, he does not remain inert and inactive, but joyously participates in the divine will. Does that resonate? Oh. He realizes that God and his nature are eternal, not distinct and separate, but related like fire and heat. The potentiality of manifestation is inherent in the spirit, and when this activates, nature becomes manifest, undergoes modifications, and possesses qualities. But the wise devotee knows that even in and through such manifestation, God alone exists. And that is essential knowing. Doesn't mean that you dedicate yourself to a piece of paper, but you come to know that the piece of paper is none other than the Absolute appearing in this way. Oh. Okay, a little more. 20 and 21. In the production of the effect and the cause, nature is said to be the cause. In the experience of pleasure and pain, the soul is said to be the cause. And this is a very interesting distinction here that's made. See if it makes sense. What's being shared. See if it makes sense. Check in. In the production of the effect and the cause, nature is said to be the cause. So I take a lighter to this and burn it. So in the production of the effect and the cause. So the cause is this and the lighter. And the effect is what?
You
Fire.
putting them together.
The effect is,
Well, burning.
Fire and burn.
yeah, melted plastic and ash on the floor, right? That's the effect. Oh. So what is said to be the cause?
The first sentence thought.
What is said to be the cause? The cause. Just listen to what's being shared. No.
No?
Listen to what's being shared. We'll say it again, but just, no, that's not it.
Okay.
We didn't quite hear it. Did anyone else hear it?
Can you repeat it?
Yeah, we'll have to. In the production of the effect and the cause, nature is said to be the cause.
Oh,
So, the field.
yeah.
In the experience of pleasure and pain, the soul is said to be the cause. And we'll explore that a little bit and see what that means. In the experience of pleasure and pain, the soul is said to be the cause. The soul, seated in nature, experiences the qualities born of nature. I think you can get that. The soul, seated in nature. So what is this?
Goodness.
Seated
Nature, guna, saguna, with qualities, nature, prakriti, right? Who is here inside of this body?
So,
Soul, thank you. Who is there inside of that body? Very good, Jai. So the soul seated in nature, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Got it? Okay. The soul seated in nature experiences the qualities born of nature. Is that true?
Yeah.
Riding on the horse.
Experiencing.
Experiences the qualities born in nature.
Yes.
Born of nature. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Attachment to the qualities is the cause of birth, of his birth in good and evil wombs. So, what is the cause of taking birth? In good or evil wombs. It doesn't make any difference, good or evil.
Attachment to the field.
Attachment to the field, taking it as what?
Yeah.
Real, independently real.
Right.
Of course, the field is real in a way. What is real about the field?
That it can be seen.
God.
God.
One reality.
Oh.
One reality. So the soul seated in nature experiences the qualities born of nature. Now, if that's the case, just take a shot at it and then we'll read the commentary. If that's the case, if I am soul seated in this body or in this field, in this nature, and I experience pain, then what is the cause? If anybody wants to take a shot, go for it. But otherwise, we'll read the commentary. We've just said it.
Being in a
We've actually just said it.
Nature.
Kyle.
Cause is separateness.
Cause is,
Separateness.
cause is taking the field to be the reality. It's the attachment to the field. Look again at Gandhi. What pain did he experience?
Physical pain, lots of different pains,
Yeah.
but he was not affected.
Not affected by it.
Right.
No. Oh.
He kept on moving.
So would you actually say then that he experienced pain?
No suffering.
No,
No.
he would,
You would say no.
no.
Yeah. What would he say?
That there's only God.
Yeah. I didn't experience pain. Oh. Okay. So very good discussion. So we'll read the commentary and then close for the morning. It says, our experience of pleasant and unpleasant are merely subjective.
Oh.
To drink ice water is pleasant in summer, yet agonizing if the teeth are sensitive. However, although butter and lime look alike, one is soothing and pleasant, the other caustic and irritating. There is a mysterious power in lime which distinguishes it from butter, That power is Shakti, or Prakriti, or God's nature. The entire universe is vibrant with life, Prakriti, and that nature functions. The nature of water is to flow, the nature of fire is to burn. Counterpart to this mysterious power is a mysterious consciousness in us which experiences that nature. Purusha, or the individual soul, here he's calling that consciousness, which experiences. He says the two, Prakriti and Purusha, seem to understand each other very well indeed. Since Purusha was the experiencer, do we catch what's being shared? Purusha is always the experiencer, right?
Yes.
Whatever happens here, it's happening in the field, but who's experiencing it? It's always I. It can't be other than I that's experiencing, right?
That's observing.
So it's always Purusha experiencing. Experiencing what? What's happening in the field. Since Purusha was the experiencer, some philosophers accorded this a superior status and regarded nature as inert. Others saw that the qualities of nature were able to influence Purusha, and so declared that nature is Parashakti, supreme, and Purusha is powerless without her. So I seem to be affected by what happens here.
Seems.
I seem to be.
Yeah.
But do you notice that you have the ability to change how you're affected by what happens here?
Perspective.
Have you noticed that?
Oh.
How you can see what happens here differently, in different ways. Yes? And therefore feel affected in different ways based more upon how you relate to it than what happens here. Is that correct?
Oh. Point of view.
So Gandhi, again, good example. Most people would say going to prison, bad. He would say going to prison,
Served the purpose.
good.
Yes.
Because he lived for the purpose, yes?
Mm-hmm.
So for him, going to prison, what did he say? He said it multiple times in the movie. What did he say?
Pick up a trip or something?
Yes.
Vacation.
Welcome it.
I've always appreciated
Welcome it.
I welcome it.
Okay.
I welcome it. If you believe in this system of justice that you're representing, then you should give me the maximum sentence.
That's right. He was so matter-of-factly saying that.
Reveling in it.
Yeah.
Reveling in it. Seeing more deeply, right?
The greater good.
Seeing more deeply and being able to touch that understanding of how it would play out.
Yeah.
So you see there's an experience, pleasurable, painful. We would call it that. We would superimpose our own experience upon it. But how could you say that to him, what we call pleasurable is pleasurable for him? How could you say that?
It's light and dark.
How?
Day and night.
It reminds me of Thich when he says, "Please call me by my true name, so my pain and pleasure can be one."
Yes. So you see, it just throws all of the notions and ideas that we have out in terms of what's pleasurable, what's painful. By the way, this fits our brahmacharya discussion later on today as well. Because these are just ideas of what's pleasurable and what's painful, you see.
Yes.
And then we seem to experience based upon the idea of it.
Mm-hmm.
But then we have the capacity to experience in a completely different way. Right? And that also speaks to the relationship between soul and the field, as it were. And so there is an inextricable, you can't actually separate them. This is the discussion here. You can't actually pull them apart. They're forever dancing together. And you can't even say that that one is higher. I mean, you can say anything for God's sakes, but it's hard to. They're in a dance. The experience will be perfect. Okay, we need to close for the morning, but we'll complete this last paragraph of his commentary. Since Purusha was the experiencer, some philosophers accorded a superior status regarding nature as inert. Others saw that qualities in nature were able to influence Purusha and so declared that nature is supreme. And Purusha was powerless without her. He says, and he gives a parenthetical, he says, you, the Purusha, could not drink water and enjoy the sweetness of honey but for Prakriti. He gives that as an example. Let us then accept both together, he says, for nature is God's nature. They are not two but one. A clear understanding of this indivisible duality frees us from confusion, likes and dislikes, craving and aversion, the ought to be and the ought not to be. Nature prevails in God's sight. So they're just levels of the same is what's being discussed. They're levels of the same. In the same way that, and we use this example, in the same way that water is water, regardless of whether it's at the surface of the ocean and being tossed about by the wind and you call it a wave, or it's at the depth of the ocean and it's being non-disturbed and you call it deep sea. It's not actually different. It's water. And the same way consciousness, whether it's at the surface and you call it Prakriti, or whether it's at the absolute depth and you call it Purusha, is one consciousness. One consciousness. So ultimately the perspective, if you go deepest, who is experiencing, you have to say Purusha, because the experience is at the depth.
Yes.
But what's being experienced are the waves.
Yes.
The waves. So, but also water. Consciousness, God. And it's understanding of this that allows you to be in the world and know that you're not of it. It's understanding of this. It's not that you have to do something. Here, what's being shared is understanding of this and devotion to that highest, the water, the absolute, which is appearing and non-appearing, which is near and far.
Oh, yes.
Pervasive.
Sorry, which is all pervasive. Which is the reality itself. Okay, so we close for the morning. Any question or comment related to discussion this morning? The two are one. Appearing is this. Appearing is that. Not appearing here and underlying it all.
True essence.
And you and I are one, my dear.
Yes. Yes.
Dancing together.
Yeah.
The eternal dance.
The eternal dance.
Oh.
Eternal dance for people of truth. No.
Jaima. Mad Fools Club. Swami Premananda's words. Mad Fools Club.
Take steps.
Oh, page 174. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhi Pushti Vardhanam Orvai Rupneva Bandhanan Mrityur Mokshiyama Mritat Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanan Mritor Mukshiyamamritat Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanan Mritor Mukshiyamamritat Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Shantu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyanto Makashi Dukhabha Bhave Asatoma Satgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mritor Mritam Gamaya Om Purnamida Purnamidam Purnamudashyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. O adorable Lord of mercy and love, salutations and prostrations unto thee. Thou art omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient. Thou art Satchidananda. Thou art existence, knowledge, and bliss absolute. Thou art the indweller of all beings. Grant us an understanding heart, equal vision, balanced mind, faith, devotion, and wisdom. Grant us inner spiritual strength to resist temptation and to control the mind. Free us from egoism, lust, anger, greed, hatred, and jealousy. Fill our hearts with divine virtues. Let us behold thee in all these names and forms. Let us serve thee in all these names and forms. Let us ever remember thee. Let us ever sing thy glories. Let thy name be ever on our lips. Let us abide in thee forever and ever. On below Satguru Shivananda Maharaj Ki,
Jai.
and for all of the saints and sages of all the traditions.
Jai.
And we'll stand for our tea.